Mr. President, I want to thank my colleagues who are on the Senate Finance Committee and the Senate Budget Committee for getting us to the point we're at today. I think we're approaching a vote to move to a full debate on the tax bill, absolutely amendable by every idea that has anything to do with taxes and raising money. And so people will have every right to be heard. It's been a process that has gone on for a long time. But what we've seen happen over the last 3 decades, after an incredible effort in 1986 to simplify the tax code, to bring it up to date, to make it competitive, what we've seen happen is a tax code that gradually has gotten more and more complicated, too many loopholes that don't seem to be fair to everybody involved. It's not as much sometimes the tax rate you're paying as you're understanding that somebody else has figured out in a competitive business, or not even the same business, how to find that tax loophole that meant they weren't paying their fair share of the taxes. And our tax code depends on a sense of fairness. It depends on a sense of equity. The out-of-date tax code mean that some of the rates, particularly in international competition, that might have been just fine 30 years ago, just simply aren't fine today. Other countries have continued to reduce their taxes, understanding, like many of our states do in this country, that tax policy that works means an economy that grows, and many of our competitors figured that out, and right now we have a chance to join them and figure it out as well. So there's a chance here to make a generational change that will last for, I would hope, at least a generation as the structure. We can do that by lowering corporate rates, which in 1986, before you or I, the one got to the Congress, and decade before at least, and longer in your case, in 1986, 35% was kind of in the middle of the countries we compete with. In 2017, it's at the very top of the tax structure of the countries we compete with. And even though they're well below us now in the tax burden they put on companies that compete with us, they're lowering their corporate rate already. Even the middle will soon be, as it turned out to be in the last 3 decades, the middle will be the top. But at least this gets us back to the middle, shifting to a territorial system where if you make money in another country, there's no penalty to bring it back here. And Mr. President, there is no doubt that we will bring hundreds of billions of dollars back to the United States economy if we pass this bill. Some of the estimates are we may bring $2 trillion back. And, you know, we've had stimuluses in the past decade where every family got $100 or something like that and thought that was a big stimulus. A $1 trillion stimulus, a $2 trillion stimulus, unbelievable in that money that's been setting someplace else by companies who wanted to invest it here, but who weren't going to bring it back under the old tax system. If they had brought it back, their shareholders would have probably removed them from the leadership in the company because it just simply would not have been good business. But it will be good business to bring that money back if we pass this bill. We're going to also allow immediate expensing that says not only spend the money, but spend it now and get credit for it now. Those kinds of things grow the economy. It'll make us more competitive worldwide. It will grow investment. And when those two things happen, higher paying jobs have always followed and will follow here. We're stuck in 8 or 9 years now of no growth in family income for hardworking families. The way to change that is, one, to take some of the tax burden away right now, and we're doing that in this bill, but 2, to be sure that we create more competition for the hard work and the skills that they take to the workplace with them every day. We know that growth stemming from tax reform will have a positive impact on voters, and they'll see the share of what's happening in the economy that, frankly, they haven't seen in the past. Families in your state, families in my state need this kind of opportunity, and job creators need this kind of relief. Just last month, the Council of Economic Advisors estimated that the average household income would increase by $4,000 annually based on reducing the corporate rate to 20%. And the economy, of course, will grow in response to that. Another study by a Harvard professor and former Reagan advisor, Martin Feldstein, found a 20% corporate tax rate would deliver a wage boost about $3,500. So whether it's $3,500, one estimate, $4,000, another estimate, that makes a real difference to families that haven't seen an increase in their pay in a long time. This bill is supported by a majority of small business, the real engine that drives the economy. There's a section called 179 expensing. Anytime you start talking like a CPA, you're in trouble. But that 179 expensing for small and medium-sized businesses, family farms, and others lets you expense immediately when you added to investment, when you bought a piece of farm equipment, something like that. All of that is enhanced in this bill. The way we keep track, accounting, I don't think is the most exciting thing to talk about in the world, but this allows the kind of counting measures that businesses say they need to really simplify how they report, how they do business, and that is right here. You know, there's some specific Missouri examples, just like there are in every one of our states. Jim Sheldon, who owns a business, DT Engineering, it's a manufacturing company in Lebanon, Missouri. They produce industrial automation systems. And when Jim was interviewed by the National Association of Manufacturers and asked what tax reform would mean to his company in terms of investment, hiring, growing his business, he just said it means more business. This is a quote. His quote is, "More business, bringing work back to the United States, will increase order rates, inventory, and development. It will create growth for DT Engineering." Jim also said that benefits from tax reform will allow him to, again, quote his quotes, "reinvest and reinvent." Spend more money in what they're doing and figure out ways to do it better. Mr. President, that's how you compete. Mike DeCola, who owns a business, HBM Holdings in St. Louis, was also interviewed by NAM. Now remember, this is a National Association of Manufacturers. These are people who make things. And anytime we get into that economy and strengthen that economy, we strengthen take-home pay. But he was interviewed by NAM. He was asked what this tax reform would mean to his business, and he said, quote, "Tax reform will unleash investment, not just for us, but for our customers." That's where his quote ends, but that's a really important point to understand. When everybody's doing better, whatever you're doing is likely to get better as well. Not only does business get better for you, but suddenly the people you sell things to are more interested in also innovating and investing and improving. Senate bill also recognizes a couple of tools that really help us go in and revitalize areas that aren't doing so well. One called new market tax credits. New market tax credits have provided an effective incentive for the private sector to invest in communities outside the economic mainstream. Now, these are usually committees that already have the water system, the electrical system, the sewer system, the sidewalks, but they've got buildings that no longer serve the purpose that they used to serve, and new market tax credits look at those buildings and other areas. In our state, again, in Missouri, new market tax credits have financed a sauce manufacturer in Hazelwood, a heating system manufacturer in Cuba, Missouri, a plumbing fixture manufacturer in Kansas City, a training center for sheet metal workers in St. Louis, the first grocery store in more than a generation in Pagedale, Missouri, and a lot more things beyond that. And this bill recognizes that. It also acknowledges the importance of historic tax credits. Talking to Pat Lilly in St. Joseph about that, you know, he obviously made the point that St. Joseph is largely an older community, a historic community. The westward movement, the wagon trains that outfitted there 150 and 175 years ago. The Pony Express started there. The stockyards thrived after the Civil War. but those old buildings, many magnificent buildings, didn't have the kind of use that they used to have. But over the past 10 years, historic tax credits have leveraged almost $100 million in redevelopment in those older buildings. Housing developed there, businesses developed there, restore and revitalize distressed areas of a city. A recent example is the restoration of the German-American building by Mosaic Life Care in St. Joseph in the downtown area, a building that wouldn't have been able to be saved without some special assistance, was made available because of historic tax credits. And again, not only is the historic building saved, but all of the services that were already there that served that building that wasn't being used now serve a building that is being used, and they don't have to be replaced. You know, the bottom line, Mr. President, is this is a bill that will create a better future for American families, a better future for American jobs. This is an opportunity to do something that is hard to do, and it only gets done once every 25 or 30 years. This is the moment. It is time to do this. We'll have a debate on the floor that lets everybody make every reasonable amendment, and I don't mean reasonable, not that it might be reasonable to do it, but reasonable in that it deals with taxes, and you figure out some way to pay for it. So you reduce something here, you add something there. That's what this debate will be. We have talked about this topic now for years and intensely for months. It's time to get this job done, and I would yield the floor, Mr. President.